Welcome back to this week's episode of the Muse Report. All you beautifully wonderful, intelligent people who have tuned in to the best podcast in the world for visionaries, people who want to develop themselves every single day to make their dreams become a reality. You're tuned in on a good week. With me, I have special guest Tiffany Parra. Now, Tiffany is a recruiting coordinator for LinkedIn, the executive producer and host for the Work in Progress podcast, and the founder of scrunchies.co. And we sit down and talk about a number of things. And the main thing that I wanted to really grasp in this episode is someone starting a journey. I know that's kind of where I am in life, and I know lots of other people who listen to this podcast are in the same place, and that could mean starting something new, looking for a new job, a new start in a different part of your life, or you're trying to find a new group of friends, a new set of networking, a new circle. Anything where you're beginning a journey, and often the first steps of that journey are usually the hardest. So it's almost like a baby walking. When they first start walking, they're waddling and falling down and tumbling and can't quite get their legs underneath them. But once they start to get comfortable with walking and going, it's just like they take off and they start running before you know it. So it's those first steps that I really wanted to focus on in this episode, and Tiffany helps us with that with some super useful tips that she provides along the way as we talk about her journey and where she is currently. We touched on a few things like the importance of, or the non-importance of, college, networking and building relationships, how to find a job on LinkedIn without even applying, job search strategy, LinkedIn tips, and our thoughts about content creation, and a few other things sprinkled in there. So this interview is quite practical, less theoretical, so you can utilize everything that she says pretty much immediately after you hear it in this episode. So thank you guys for tuning in. Screenshot your phones, show me that you're listening. I really appreciate it. Rate and subscribe if you want to just like let someone else know what you think about the podcast so they can see how great and awesome it is. Love you guys. Thank you. Let's get into this episode with Tiffany Parra.
Loading.
Extra, read all about it.
It's a case study for success.
Be teachable.
What better way to learn than to just ask?
The learning process becomes a journey.
Turning dreams into realities.
Part of execution is totally believing whatever you're doing is going to work.
What are your passions and what are your gifts? And that's where it really starts.
Chances are for taking. Take a chance on yourself.
Any and everyone is capable of being a leader.
You're not going to have all the answers immediately.
Mentors to expose you to things that you otherwise wouldn't know.
It was all I thought about and dreamed. Like I would literally get up in the morning, practice, because I knew the time would come.
Just do it. People who don't know you that are listening, who you are, and then kind of like how you got to what you're doing now. And I guess I could say it or you could say it, but you could probably explain it better than I can.
All right, cool. So yeah, my name's Tiffany Parra. I'm currently a recruiting coordinator at LinkedIn right now. Just graduated from Cal Poly San Luis Obispo in June, so not too long ago. Have a kind of funny story of how I got to LinkedIn. Was really into creating LinkedIn videos when it first came out on the platform, and that's kind of how I got my start. And then just created a ton of videos, kind of built a personal brand from that, and really used that as my main leveraging point when looking for a job. So I actually didn't apply to any jobs. I just created a lot of content, and so that habit of creating content has stayed with me to date with my current podcast, Work in Progress, which I post new episodes like every Monday and Friday, and then I live stream on Wednesdays. So that's a lot of content. And then I also put out content for LinkedIn. And yeah, I'm working on a scrunchie brand on the side as well. So a lot of things going on, but that's kind of like a rundown of kind of where I'm at now and like pretty fast version of like kind of how I am where I am today.
Yeah. Okay. And what was the name of the school you said? Sorry, I didn't quite catch it.
Yeah, so like the long name is called California Polytechnic University in San Luis Obispo, but everyone calls it Cal Poly SLO. It's in California. I'm originally from New Jersey, but I wanted to go to school out west. Yeah, so I'm from the East Coast. And then I knew after coming out west, I wanted to stay out here. So I like was very much on my job grind because it was like, you know, a lot of the kids I went to school with were like, oh, I'll just move back home. And I'm like, nah, I can't really do that. So yeah, I just made it a point to like get a job by graduation.
Just a little background, like growing up and before even you got to college, like, well, first, what did you study while you were in school?
So it's kind of funny because what I studied in school is like not really related, or like on the surface is not related to anything I do now. So I studied agricultural business, which is like the combination of like science classes pertaining to agriculture. Some like more when I got into my fourth year was it like more focused on agriculture and like food production, and then business classes, so like finance, accounting. I kind of like felt like, you know, maybe by my end of my second year, like I kind of felt like I was ready to switch. And I mean, I had the grades to switch, and looking back, I mean, I don't really regret anything because I think that, you know, everything you learn is just like, it builds upon the next skill set. So me being an ag business major like does differentiate me in some ways rather than just like a normal business major. But I learned pretty quickly, like, I'm not really about this. Like, so that's why I did so many projects. Even in college, I had like a kind of like an epiphany that like, oh, you know, like if I really want to do what I want to do, I have to start doing it now in order to set myself up for later.
Yeah. So, I mean, what I kind of want this episode to be about is kind of like the process of the journey. I'm a senior in school, so like life is about to start. And I'm trying to figure out my way, like trying to get a job and trying to figure out if I'm going to go back home and all this other stuff. And I know that a lots of my peers and other people who I associate with are going through the same thing, even if they're not a college student. Like maybe they're just like trying to start a new path in their life. And I kind of see that you kind of had that same experience, and then you kind of made your way to LinkedIn. First, I mean, I'm a picky person, so I'm going to ask a lot of more in detail questions, not necessarily about LinkedIn and all that stuff. But why did you choose that major in the first place?
I chose the major. Well, there's two reasons really. So I saw a video on it and I was like, this is so foreign to me. Like, I guess like, why not just try it? And also because it was because I really wanted to get into that school, and technically it was in a different, it was in a different section or whatever, a different college. And so that college was easier to get into than the business school. And so I applied under that, like kind of just like, oh, I could just like switch if I want to. And then I just got into it. And like at that time in my life, like I was like pretty into school. Like before I started all these projects and even during the projects, like I was always like a pretty like high achiever when it came to like academics. And so like I felt like I was never really about school, but it just gave me something to like work on. And so for me, it was like I never really had a direct passion about anything I was ever learning. So it was like, all right, I'm doing good in this, and like I'm learning, like I must like, you know, this is working for me. But yeah, that's kind of the background as to why I chose that major.
I mean, I just find it interesting, me being in college and me like knowing some of my friends that like, they're like, dude, I don't even know why like I'm doing this right now. I'm like, well, in our case, like if you're like a junior, senior, if you're trying to switch, like it's going to be kind of difficult. So, I guess like, do you recommend like kind of just finishing through with it, and then like you could still direct your life in the way you want it to go by the things that you do that aren't necessarily related to your major, or should you just like cut ties and like try to start over?
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like I wouldn't feel super comfortable recommending either way to anyone because it's just like my own journey. So like this is what I decided to do. Like I don't know if I like was studying, if I switched into marketing. Like I always think like when people do question me like, "Oh, why did you, why didn't you just switch to marketing?" It's like because I wasn't learning the things I wanted to learn in my major, I created projects and I got hands-on experience. Like I was like doing more in terms of marketing than like a lot of the kids in
In
marketing,
marketing, right? Yeah.
So like in terms of like I mean like you can allow yourself to be like determined by any label anyone gives you, right? Whether that be your college major or what have you. But it's like really up to you to like define who you're going to be. So like I mean I graduated from like a good school and I felt like knowing the business knowledge I had, I felt like I was going to do fine. And I mean, I feel like I only really started paying attention to like how the world really functions in my junior year and like really started to understand the world and how it functioned by my senior year. So, I mean, if I had known all the stuff I know now going into college, like to be honest, like maybe I would not even gone to college. So yeah, it's like a dangerous game to play the hindsight card because you just mature so much.
Yeah.
In like a relatively like not a lot of time.
Yeah, I mean, the thing for me, like I was saying in one of my podcast episodes, I don't remember which one, but college for me, I could have, what I'm doing now and which the direction I want to go, I could have done it without school. But the networks, the relationships, and just the intangible things that I've learned while being away from home. Well, really, this is like my 7th or 8th year being away from home because I went to a boarding school for high school. But just the little intangible things I wouldn't have learned anywhere else. So in that case, college was really valuable. But as far as the material that I learned in classes, I think I could have learned it somewhere else. But I always just find it interesting to like see other people's perspective, especially with the era we're going into. With like learning just like at your fingertips, like masterclass and Skillshare and all this stuff, where you don't necessarily have to get like a college education to be extremely learned in whatever field you want to go into. But one last thing, just to give me some perspective with what your journey was. What is if you've already determined it, what's like your end goal? Like, where do you want to kind of end up? What's your mission?
Yeah, definitely. So I have this like written on my mirror. I like write it. I try and write it every single day. But so I guess like similar to you, right? Like I've gotten into like more personal development stuff recently. So like envisioning and like manifesting like your goals into like, actually things that are going to happen by like writing them down and by saying them is, I really think it is powerful. And so my like goal that I'm even looking at right now, just like in front of my whiteboard, is by, like 27, I want to run an e-commerce brand or brands and have a company of 15 people with a podcast studio in my office. And the headquarters are in either LA or New York. So like I have a very like,
wow, that's very detailed.
Yeah. Cause I mean, you got to know exactly what you want. And I mean, like whenever I think, and then I even have it, like, I'll show you, I mean, anyone listening, I'm sorry you don't get to see this, but
I might be able to figure out how to show them somehow, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, I can send you a screenshot of my phone. But on my phone right now, it says, like, are you working towards your goal? And it's just it's like a black background with white text, and it says the vision, which is whatever I just stated, like running an e-commerce brand or brands. Mm-hmm. And so like every time I check the time, every time I open my phone, I look at this, and I think subconsciously it does help me, right? Like it's definitely more impactful than just having like a pretty picture there. It makes me think like, okay, well, I'm at work right now. Is this really playing into the long game of what I want to do? And like, if it's not, how am I going to figure out how to get out of this and better position myself to where I am starting to work towards that goal?
Yeah, I think that's something maybe I should start trying to practice more. I mean, I don't have it right in front of me right now because I'm in my closet space, but in my actual bedroom part, I have it's like a 3-part plan. So it's basically like my overall life commitment, and that's basically like what I want to, when I'm like all said and done and 6 feet under, like this is what I want people to know me for and what I've contributed to the world. And then from
That's
there,
sick.
I have my principles, pretty much like my values of how I want to achieve that. And then I have my daily mission is like every day, this is what I do to get to these other two parts. But I think if I had a little bit more detail, it might give me like a little bit more like drive, because like I need to get that, like instead of having this like grand like little dream type thing, is really like, no, I know exactly what I'm going for. So I think that's really cool.
Thank you. No, I think your thing is really cool too. Like I really just think about like you know, where I want to be in 5 years. I haven't thought about like, you know, when it's all said and done. So that's really cool that you can even think that far out.
Yeah. And I don't know if it's really like necessary to think that far out, but I think just having an overall purpose and drive is just kind of directs your priorities and your passions, and everything kind of falls into place from there. So I kind of try to look that kind of long-term vision. But as far as for you, so like you went to school, and then I heard that on Casey's podcast that you sent a video, and is that like you got a job through a video?
Well, okay, so to like yeah, and we can like totally get like strategic here too. Like if you mentioned like you're like going to be graduating soon, and if this podcast is like your listener base is like people who are in college or like they want to go like looking for jobs, I feel like that's the one thing, that's like the one process I got down. Because like when I was looking for a job, like I was not, like I said, applying to jobs, but I was definitely hustling, like from like the moment I woke up until like, I don't know, until dinner. Like I was, but, and going back to like realizing how the world works, right? Like I always knew networking was important. I always knew like, you know, that, and I've seen it firsthand because like, you know, you see internships, like a lot of times it's like, oh, my uncle, you know, works at this company and da 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 da. Right. But like for me, because I was from New Jersey, I didn't have a network in California. Like my network that I have now is like through hard work of like building that network, which if you guys are listening to this right now and you currently don't have a network, a professional network, like invest the time to develop that, because the earlier you develop that, the better. Like you want to have that network because, and it doesn't have to be people you talk to every single day, but people you've at least talked to once, because then it's less weird when you reach out to them in 6 months and you're like, hey, like, actually, is there any way you could introduce me to this person? Well, they've already talked to you once and they know you're a good person, versus like right off the bat, hey, can you introduce me to this person? Like that rubs people the wrong way. So you want to like, you know, be strategic about it, be smart, and like invest the time to like get to know people. But yeah, going back to like, you know, what you brought up there in terms of like using video. So video is like what I always post on LinkedIn. It's like what I started in, and now I've seen like the algorithm kind of like lower it down to like all other mediums. But once video first started, it was insane. And anyway, I can like link this article to you, but someone I knew wrote an article, her name's Amy Jones, about using video messages through a Chrome extension called Loom. And so what you do is you record yourself, hi, like CEO of this startup, like insert name, like, oh, I read, and the great thing about LinkedIn is like all their content is right there. Like you want to know what a CEO of a startup is interested in, like go read the articles they post on LinkedIn, go look at the things that they've liked, go look at the things they've posted, like do your research so that when you're talking to them, you're like, oh, I read your article on, you know, influencer marketing and sneaker landscape. And I found it so fascinating because I'm actually super passionate about sneakers. I'd love to hop on a call with you sometime. Definitely let me know. I hope you enjoy this video message and we get to connect. And then you end that video or message. It like basically sends a link, a special link, and then you can include that link in your outreach, in your LinkedIn connection request. So you can say, hi, you know, insert name. I made a video for you. Would love for you to check it out. And the great thing is, like Loom, you can see if the person's viewed your video. So it's like really cool because it takes like what, maybe, I mean, you should do your research. Maybe researching takes like 20 minutes. The message itself takes like a minute. And then you can actually see like, oh, this person actually opened my video. Like they actually saw it. Like that's super cool. And so, yeah, that's definitely a strategy I used a ton. And because of that strategy, I got to meet, I didn't get LinkedIn specifically, but I got to meet one of my mentors who I put on this Coachella event where we had Nigel Houston, which the kid was supposed to perform. And we had like a whole bunch of rappers there, like Young Pinch, and I don't know, it's like kind of like a pretty like lit lineup in terms of like what it was, right? And that was all because I reached out to him with a video message, and then we hopped on a call, and he's like, hey, we need an intern for this event. And at the time I was a senior and I wanted more experience, and like I got trained. Basically I didn't get paid, but I got experience and I got to learn just like core skills that I feel like helped me be better now, like writing a good email, that's all stuff that you learn like only through experience.
Oh, that's so cool. So that app is called Loom.
Yeah, it's called like useloom.com.
And that's LOOM?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I definitely have to look into that. And kind of curious, you said that you were, even though you weren't like applying for jobs, you were like working to find opportunities like day in and day out. Like, what were you looking for? Were you looking like in a certain niche or direction?
Yeah, I mean, it evolved too. So the thing is with me, I kind of left myself very open, like only until I didn't have this vision statement, like when I was in college. Like I had no idea, like this vision statement is only like, maybe a month old. And so I didn't have a clear cut, like this is what I want to do, but I stayed very open. So, I would just look at like, what are companies I want to work for? I would have a list and then I would break it down. Okay, I want to work at these 20 companies. What are 3 people from each of these companies? I would find them on LinkedIn. I'd say, okay, these are the people, right? Let's say VP, head of sales, whatever. It doesn't need to be people high up. They can be like, people who have just been there longer than maybe a year. Mm-hmm. Like, all right, I'm going to go on LinkedIn. I'm going to try and connect with them. Maybe I don't have to make them all video messages. I'll make some of them video messages. And then I would tally up, okay, like who did I reach out to? Like check mark, go down the list, do that all. And then, that takes a lot of time. If you have like 20 companies, that's like 60 people. I was basically like selling myself. Like I wasn't applying to jobs, but I was selling myself in the sense that like, hey, we're going to have this informational interview, and like with the hope that, you already know I'm looking for a job. Like hopefully I'm not going to expect anything, but hopefully like, if you do come across something, like you'll think of me.
Right.
And then that's how I got to LinkedIn eventually. But yeah, that's kind of like a part of my job strategy, was doing that. And like all my strategies are like not even really my own too. Like they're mine because of the way I combine them, but they were mine because of all the people I met while looking for a job that gave me solid advice. So like that's a big thing too. I think that for anyone listening, like when someone gives you advice, or especially when you reach out for advice, like actually act on that person's advice. You know what I mean? Like so many people like want advice, and then you give good advice to them and then they don't do anything with it. So like when I heard something like, oh, this person's like, using Loom, like, oh, that's really cool. Like I'm going to start doing that. Or like this person's like tracking all their outreach. Like I'm going to start doing that. Like, oh, this person's saying like, oh, hey, like I'm in town, when they're not actually in town, just to get coffee meetings. Like maybe I'll start like showing up places and trying to get coffee meetings. So all this stuff, like, they're all just like little strategies that I really learned through like networking with people on LinkedIn.
Wow. That's awesome. And I guess that's something I could start doing. Did you just find like companies that you were just interested in? Like, they seem cool. I'm going to reach out to them.
Yeah. Because of like my networking, I know people that have worked for Nike. I know someone who's like in a really cool division at Foot Locker. I know someone at Apple Music. I know someone at a production house in LA. I know someone like working for an autonomous vehicle company. Like, granted, like none of these people am I going to say like, hey, like, can I get a job? But these are all contacts that, I've built. And these are just like a few, right? A lot of other people that are, are their own entrepreneurs and things. But these are all contacts that I've built, over the span of like 2 years. So now we're at the point where, if I need guidance or something, I feel that I can like email them because I've already like met them in person and stuff. But relationships take time. Like people think that like, it doesn't happen overnight. And that's why I say to start early, because relationships, you can't like you can't rush those, especially like, yeah, any type of relationship, but especially like professional relationships, because these people at the end of the day, like they still probably have a family, like they have their personal life, they have all their stuff. So you want to be as like low key as possible while still like presenting yourself in a way that like is value driven, you know?
Right. I think it really just comes from being authentic and genuine. I mean, like if you're actually interested in that person and what they're doing and honestly want to connect with them without really wanting or needing anything in return, they'll sense that, and that will pretty much, that's like that first tier of resistance that you kind of just break down. And yeah, I mean, I've seen it happen in just what I've done in building my network and like being consistent, like checking up on people, emailing them, like messaging them on their birthday, like all those little things kind of just are like little notches of trust and like things that they like, okay, this person's okay, like I could actually like accept them if they really, and then if you do need something, you have a ask, it's not like, oh, they're just trying to take from me, because you've already poured into them somewhat. So yeah, but the way you went about it is really interesting, and I think I'm going to really start doing that, and that could be really helpful for, I mean, if you have a podcast, like it's pretty easy. Like you could even say like, I have this podcast, like I'm just trying to connect with people, this is what it's about, blah blah. Now you have automatically like some kind of reasoning of why you're reaching out, because like, oh, they see this, that you're actually doing something, you're trying to find things and stuff like that. It's not like completely random.
Totally, like podcasts, like, and I did all of this before, or no, I did some of this while I was doing my podcast, but at the time my podcast had like a different focus, so I didn't really think to like interview some of the people I've talked to. And yeah, no, I totally agree with everything you said. Like it really just comes from like authenticity and like, you know, just being a genuine person. Yeah, no, I love what you said there, because it's so true. Like all those little actions, like they build trust, and then with trust, like that's when you start to build like relationships and stuff. Yeah.
And as far as LinkedIn goes, I mean, I had Nigel Hammett on the podcast, who's like, he's real big on LinkedIn.
I've seen him.
Yeah. So he was telling me, I was like, dude, get me hip to LinkedIn, because like I had a LinkedIn just because like you're a college student, you need a job, you make a LinkedIn. But I didn't really know how to utilize the platform. And I saw what he was doing. I'm like, man, this dude is killing the game, like on LinkedIn. So I was like, maybe, and especially with what I'm doing with my podcast, it's not really, I don't consider it like a highly intellectual podcast or anything like that, but it does have a certain type of people that it caters to. People who really are into bettering themselves, people who are into branding, people who are into self-development. So not necessarily everyone on my Instagram, you know, like my boys I play basketball with, really care about what I'm talking about as far as it comes to that. So I was like, man, maybe LinkedIn is somewhere where there's like that more focused people, like audience, who will actually kind of like want to know what I'm talking about, and then vice versa, people who are doing things that I'm also interested in. So I was asking him, I'm like, man, how do I work this LinkedIn thing out? So I kind of just started like stalking people's profiles, like you and him and some other people. I was literally just like copying like what you guys are doing, just trying to make my LinkedIn, like, you know, kind of get up there and look more attractive and appealing, where people view your profile and actually want to connect with you. But I asked him, now I'm asking you, because everyone has a different perspective and different tactics. How do I go about, and anyone who's listening, how do they go about maximizing the reach and effectiveness of their LinkedIn profile, or LinkedIn in general?
I think that in terms of, you know, really maximizing your LinkedIn strategy, it really just depends on like two things. So it's like, well, first, I think everything comes down to like, I honestly don't like when people say like it all comes down to the why, and maybe that's just because it's been overused like at this point, but
start with why.
It really comes, yeah, everyone says it, and like it's totally fine. Like I've said it myself, it's hard not to say, but it is true. Like you have to start like and think about what your intention is, right? Is it looking for a job? Is it to create a personal brand? Is it a combination of both? And then that'll lead you to like how you should optimize your LinkedIn profile. Like, do you want to use keywords? Like, you know, like what are the keywords you're going to be using that you want to be searched by? Do you want to go into marketing, finance? Like, what are these things that you want to do. But I mean, all right, here's like a big thing that I feel like, is a solid takeaway that anyone can do today to make their LinkedIn better. Okay, I see a lot of people and like, okay, let me just preface this by saying like I put my projects as work experience under my LinkedIn because I feel like it makes you a lot more interesting. And honestly,
Definitely.
the project section on LinkedIn is like so far down, it's not even like in the experience part.
Right, yeah.
And so I include my projects as my work experience because a lot of my projects, I have better titles in them. I get to actually do more than I did in my work experiences. And I feel like they just showcase me a little bit better. So I would put your projects in your work experience if you're proud of your projects. Always like link stuff out if you want people to check it out, if you're proud of it. Like if you have a podcast, like put that on, like put it as like, producer of, mine is work in progress. And so that's one thing. But on the flip side of that, when you are putting on your own projects, right? Like there's a good chance that your project doesn't have a company page. And so what you're going to get is this ugly gray box on LinkedIn, and it's going to look like kind of like weird. Like, oh, why is this, like, where did this person work? Like, oh, you have like a nice, beautiful like LinkedIn logo, and then you have an ugly gray box right after it. And then you all have like ugly gray boxes until you get to like, I don't know, the next company logo, like Salesforce or something. You're gonna be like, oh, what is this? That just doesn't seem super trusting. And what you can just do yourself is create a company page for your own project. So like my work in progress podcast, and you can create a podcast like business page. Just upload your logo up and put your bio description, create a company page, and then when you link out to your project, you'll get a nice image that represents your project. So for me, I have my work in progress logo as my like image next to my title. So all of my experiences have images next to them, and that just honestly builds a level of trust, because I know when I go to other people's profiles and they just have a bunch of gray boxes, I'm like, are these organizations legit?
Yeah.
Like, what's going on here? So that's one tip I would give.
Gotcha. Okay. And I've seen that you do like, I mean, I followed you on Instagram just to see what else you were into and stuff. And I see one that you are, you said a curator for Flex with Food.
Mm-hmm.
So you could talk about that a little bit. And also, you said, what was the name? It was the Scrunchies Co. Scrunchie Co.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, scrunchies.co. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, tell us a little bit about that, like your other projects, what you're working on, and then we'll kind of segue into the last part, which is kind of content and how you go about that.
Yeah, for sure. So, all right. So, got a couple projects going. So, Flex with Food started when I was still a student in my junior year. I started Flex with Food because at the time I was using Snapchat, but I don't use Snapchat anymore.
Yeah,
and
R.I.P.
I was like, I was like dating my like boyfriend, and he like we would always go out to eat together. Like that was our thing. Like we just loved going out to eat, and like I always loved food, but I don't know, when you have someone to go out to eat with, like it's just way more fun. So go out to eat all the time, and like people would just always message me like, oh, where are you guys eating? Like, like I'm in this like spot, where should I go eat? Like we're basically like their like Yelp, right? And so I was like, geez, so many people want to know like where we're eating. Like we should just start. And at the time I was already into doing like social media pages and stuff. I was like, we should just like start our own social media page, and like why not just like make a food page? Like it would be fun. So we started the food page, and then it was like one night after a concert, I was like brainstorming. I was like, dude, like we can't just like have a food page. Like it has to be different. Like there has to be a way for it to differentiate itself from all the other food pages on Instagram. And then I thought about it, and like we're also like both into streetwear, so I was like what if we combine like fashion and food? Like no one's doing it right now. Like I feel like it's like two millennial trends coming into one, like because if you think about it, like if you have like $100 to spend on a hoodie, like you should have like, a couple of bucks to go out to eat too. And like people are always taking always taking pictures of their food without realizing like your fit is actually like in those food shots, like, And so we created this concept of Flex with Food, which is basically merging these two cultures of streetwear and food. and have built like a community around it to where now, like, you know, we just had someone in like Belgium tag us in a post. We've had people from Singapore, people from like people we don't know honestly tag us in posts, and like it's pretty sick because the page is not super big. It's like at like 1,200 followers, which is not like bad for like a side project. Like I never spent any money into it or anything like that, but it's just cool to see that people like are cool with the concept enough to like want to like post it on themselves and get a repost for a page that isn't that big. So that's been great. And then in terms of scrunchies.co, which is like, you know, I'd say my two main projects are my podcast Work in Progress and then scrunchies.co. So I'm a co-founder for that. And it's basically, we want to create a brand where it's really like self-expression through scrunchies. And so, you know, if you think about it right now, there's really not a lot of scrunchie brands. Like we kind of want to do what Stance did with socks with scrunchies, where like we made scrunchies a brand rather than just a commodity. And so we want to launch the site in spring of 2019. If anyone listening to this is interested in the brand, you can check out my Instagram. I posted some Instagram story highlights of some of the patterns. And you can sign up for our mailing list now, and then you'll find out when we go live, which should be spring of 2019. But that's been such a fun ride, like starting your own brand, like, because you have to think about so many different elements. And like, this is my first brand, and like, I want everything to look good. And like, I don't personally like design myself. And so just like making sure you're kind of like putting out your vision to people, but also like letting those people showcase their own talent has been an experience. And also thinking about, okay, like I like certain things, right? Like I like maybe some dark colors. I like this and I like that, but is that what I want the brand to represent? Like not necessarily. So we're planning to launch, spring of 2019. We have some really dope packaging. It's like holographic. We are going to launch with 3 collections: a Gucci inspired print, a velvet collection, and then a smiley face collection as well. So those will all be available. And yeah, I'm pretty excited. I got like 900 scrunchies in my room right now. So we'll see what happens.
Wow, they heard it first here on the Music Report podcast. No, that is such a flipping good idea. Oh my God. Like, wow. I never thought about that. Scrunchies is like Scrunchies is the brand, like Vaseline is petroleum jelly or what. I don't know. That was a weird connection, but you know, you get it.
No, that's good. That is good. No, that is true. And then sorry, this sounds like I probably sound crazy because I have like so many projects, but
that's dope.
And then my podcast, if I could plug that real quick,
plug it.
It's called Work in Progress, and I basically interview creatives and entrepreneurs to find the blueprint on how they got started, in the hopes of encouraging other people to start their own projects. So similar to you, like I'm just looking to learn from really amazing people. We go live at 6:30 p.m. Pacific time, 9:30 Eastern time on Wednesdays. And just have like on Tuesdays, I post like, hey guys, this is who I'm going live with tomorrow. Like you can check it out. This will be the agenda. This is what we're going to talk about. And so had some really great people on. Featured Jade Dharmawangsa, which is like a YouTuber I love. Actually featured her for the live stream. And now we're at like episode 17 of the live stream and then episode 63 of the podcast. So it's been a fun ride so far. It's been a journey so far for sure.
Yeah, super dope. I mean, all those projects are super cool. It's kind of like what I'm trying to be on very soon. I mean, as far as me starting my own brand, I'm in the process of doing that, process of building a website, in the process of trying to start my own coaching and consulting business. So I have a lot of things, and also the podcast is my main platform and content. I'm also starting a YouTube channel as well, with the video, which will also be a part of the podcast video and audio versions of it. So like I'm trying to do a lot of things as well. And then one thing that I just wanted to like ask you, like, do you think like we're in this age of like content, and like the more content, the more relevant you are basically. And for someone who's like trying to start their journey or trying to gain relevance in whatever field or whatever it is, do you think everyone should produce content, even if it's like not their personality? Like some people just don't like to like put stuff out all the time, but do you think it's like necessary?
I think that you only get better at it with time. And so by starting now, like you understand, like how to create better content. But yeah, I think that content nowadays is something that's really interesting. I would say definitely invest time into it if you are interested, but also invest time into things that you feel like are revenue generating. Because if I saw one of your questions, like what you mentioned was like, oh, what if you could look back, like what is one thing? Like I'd probably focus on like developing a skill that like at the core you can make money off of, because content's really fun and all, but like at the end of the day, like it doesn't really make you money. And like if it does make you money, it takes a long time. Yeah. Or or you have to like really invest into making it money. So I would say like, it's hard because like I try and balance the two, right? Like I want to be a super legit like business person first and foremost that also creates content, versus the vice versa, which I think is a dangerous slope kind of we're heading in with like the era of entrepreneurship and content, is where you have a lot of people putting out entrepreneurial content, but it's like, are they actually like a legit business person? Like, I don't know. It's like, it's almost like, why are you spending so much time convincing people you're legit when, you should know you're actually legit? So I would just say at the core of it, you got to be able to back up whatever you're putting out online.
Well, there it is. Hope you enjoyed that interview with Tiffany. I'll be linking all her plugs, her website, her social media, and all that other good stuff in the show notes. So please check her out. You definitely want to see what she is up to. Thank you guys for tuning in to this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, share it with your grandma, your auntie, your uncle, somebody that needs it, a friend, a colleague, a coworker, just someone that needs it and can utilize this information and make their dream become a reality from this episode. I will talk to you guys next week. Thank you guys so much. Peace.
Well, that's the end of our MRP episode. Thank you for listening, everything, but it's time to go. We'll have a new one for you next week on the flip side. But until then, don't kill the vibe, subscribe. Don't kill the vibe, make sure you go ahead and subscribe. Don't kill the vibe, make sure you go ahead and subscribe. Don't kill the vibe, make sure you go ahead and subscribe. Don't kill the vibe, make sure you go ahead and subscribe.